Of all the cases and all of the legal pileup of mess and vulnerability that Donald Trump currently faces, it is the civil fraud trial in New York that does something none of the others do. It gets to the heart of who Trump thinks he is, what he thinks his essence is all about. Donald Trump ran his 2016 presidential campaign on the ruse of his stature as a successful businessman. He bragged about deal-making skills and boasted about real estate holdings and a lavish lifestyle. And he dragged the whole family into it, right? Made it a family affair. His kids took on high-level positions at the Trump Organization. And then he had his two older sons take the wheel when he went to the White House. But that successful businessman veneer was completely shattered forever when Judge Engoron found Trump and those at his business liable for fraud 1 month ago now. We have to keep in mind as we cover this trial that the trial underway is not to determine whether fraud was committed. That's been settled. That has been determined. The trial is about figuring out how much money and other stipulations will need to be paid as a consequence of that fraud that has been found. So this week brings that trial to a whole new level. Judge Engoron announced that the three eldest Trump kids and the ex-president himself will be called to testify over the course of this week and next, starting Wednesday. We do not know how forthcoming the children or the former president will be on the stand, but we can take a hint from their depositions. Last year, in a very like father, like son way, both Donald Trump and Eric Trump took the Fifth hundreds and hundreds of times. The elder Trump invoked the Fifth Amendment 440 times. Eric Trump invoked it more than 500, which brings us back to the trial this week and what to expect. So far, 17 witnesses have been heard across 19 days. Trump and his former lawyer and fixer, Michael Cohen, came face to face for the first time in 5 years. The ex-president was fined $15,000 for violating not one time, but 2 times the gag order placed on him. At one point, he totally freaked out, melted down, and angrily stomped out of the courtroom. So what's going to happen next? Members of his own family take the stand. We'll be watching. It's where we start the hour with some of our most favorite reporters and friends. New York Times investigative reporter Sue Craig is back with us. Also joining us, Assistant U.S. Attorney and MSNBC legal analyst Glenn Kirshner. With us at the table for the hour, our friend Donnie Deutsch, host of the podcast On Brand. Donnie, you were sitting there. The table was back there. The year might have been, I don't know, 2018 or 19. And you said this was it, that it would be some sort of either RICO prosecution or the company that would take him down. They're both happening.
Yeah, I thought they were going to RICO the company. I mean, the RICO is happening somewhere else. The company's going down here because everybody in New York, if you were any way connected to business or real estate or commerce.
Or Trump.
Or Trump, knew that he was a scam. That whatever was said was exaggerated, lied about, that he, I always say this, if you went up to his office, it is not what you see in The Apprentice. The boardroom was a set. It's this little beat up, tawdry, musty office with 20 or 30 people. It's a licensing company. So this whole braggadocio about him and his great wealth and his great success was so over exaggerated. So, and I think George Conway said it best, and you used that word essence in the open. His essence is I'm big, I'm strong, I'm successful, I'm powerful. And this just puts a pin in that balloon and it just goes.
Shrivels, shrinks, goes away. Yeah. And that's why he's so crazy?
This is getting to him. A normal person, and we know he's not normal, would be more afraid of jail time and would be more afraid of what's going on January 6th and what's going on with the documents. But to him, this is his being. This is his sense of self. This is his size, if you know what I mean, how big he is, or how little he is.
Well, I said this last week. He seems to be trying to snatch jail time from the jaws of civil liability. I mean, he might end up in jail in a case that represents no real threat of jail time for him.
I find it interesting that he's there also.
Why is he there?
He doesn't need to. I think it's what we're talking about. I think he just needs to be there sneering. Oh, by the way, a little sidebar. My favorite anecdote of the week. I spoke to Michael Cohen yesterday. I said, so what happened when you saw him face to face? He goes, I winked at him. So there you go. The cameras, unfortunately, were not able to catch Michael Cohen winking at Donald Trump. That's something I would have paid for.
Me too. Sue Craig, you brought it to our attention as a show, I think, first, this anger that is just seething from Trump. Tell me if the kids are as triggering as everything that's happened so far.
I mean, they could be. It's going to be interesting to see them up. We're going to see Don Jr. up first, and then Eric, and then Ivanka is now going to be mid next week. We have a sense of what they might say because we've either seen their depositions or we've seen pieces of them. And you mentioned at the top that Eric took the fifth. He also gave another deposition where he did talk, but they're going to be, I think, interesting really in different ways. And there could be, I think there's, I think anytime any of these folks step into a courtroom, there's some theater going on. So I expect to see some. But, I think Eric and Ivanka, if I had to pick two, would be the ones to watch. And they're going to be asked just, I think, all of them at the outset, just about these statements of financial condition we've heard so much about. These were the ones where Trump exaggerated his wealth and then submitted them to financial institutions, which is, what is, got them into trouble, and you're not supposed to do that. And they're going to be asked what they know about it, and were they involved in the drafting of it, and then were they, if not, who was? And that's just all three of them are going to get that. But I think with Eric, Eric has been essentially running the company for several years now, and I think is the most involved. He has been in court some days with his father, and he's intimately involved in some of the properties that the Attorney General is looking at. So I think that's what we can expect from him. I think he is probably going to be on the stand Thursday, potentially into Friday. That's what they're planning for. And then Ivanka is coming in mid next week, and she's going to be interesting because she was not named as a defendant in this. The appellate court said she sort of didn't fall in within the statute of limitation issues, but she has potentially really important information. She was an officer of the company for a while, and she was involved in two really critical projects that the Attorney General is looking at. One is Doral and a loan that was arranged with Deutsche Bank. She was involved in some of the introductions between the wealth management unit at Deutsche Bank and the Trump Organization. So what were those conversations? And a lot of questions about that loan, any misrepresentations about Doral, was she involved in them? And the same for the old post office. They were going to get similar questions on that property. So I think if I were to pick the three, I think the two, Eric and Ivanka, are going to be the most interesting as we head into next week with Ivanka.
Have we, Sue, heard from either of them since the judge found the Trump org liable for fraud?
We haven't heard from any of them, really. We've seen Eric in court behind his father, when he's been at the mic and he's been sitting in the courtroom, but we haven't heard publicly from any of them, no.
So, Glenn, I mean, that's the part of it that I feel will be interesting in terms of the testimony they offer and whether they just take the fifth. I mean, there's this performative piece that I think Tim O'Brien and Sue have both spoken to of Alina Habet. Tim O'Brien said she changed her outfit 3 times one day in court, and I'm not sure that has a legal purpose, so I'm assuming that it's performative. Maybe there was a legal purpose. But to the degree that fraud has already been established and they're figuring out what that means and what the punishment is, I wonder how they act. What are your best guesses?
Nicole, this is such perilous terrain for these 4 Trump witnesses because, as you say, the judge has already found Trump liable. He's already ruled against them, concluding that they were involved in sort of massive, systemic, years-long business fraud. And now these 4 witnesses are going to be examined and, importantly, cross-examined on their business practices that it seems like the judge implicitly has concluded some of it involved fraud. The reason I say it's so perilous, and frankly, they would be well advised to just plead the fifth. Nobody wants to plead the fifth because it's not a good look in the court of public opinion. But even more importantly, people don't like to plead the fifth in the context of a civil case because the finder of fact, ordinarily a jury, can then draw negative inferences from it. They can hold the invocation of their Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination against them. But listen, Judge Engoron has already granted partial summary judgment, and it's all about the disgorgement, how much money they're going to have to pay back at this point. So I'm not sure what the upside is, other than perhaps a perceived public relations upside to these 4 people, Don Jr., Eric, Ivanka, and Donald Trump himself, testifying substantively. You know, it seems like their attorneys would advise them, listen, just plead the fifth and let's get this over with, because you can only hurt yourself. If they lie, Nicole, I'm not saying this is the perjury trap, because the only thing you have to do to escape from a perjury trap is tell the truth. But maybe there's something more important to Donald Trump than the truth, like his perceived value and wealth. But, you know, if they lie under oath, I would not put it past New York Attorney General Letitia James to charge them criminally with perjury. So it seems to me they have a lot to lose and almost nothing to gain.